Hey everyone, I'm Andy Hodges for Sebastian Daily here at the Centennial celebration at Riverview Park in Sebastian. I'm with Vice Mayor Fred Jones. Thanks for your time on being on here.
Thank you guys for coming out and taking part in this celebration. When we came down last night for the parade, when you saw all of those kids and families lining the street, it was just amazing to see that so many people come out to enjoy a special day like that for our Christmas parade. And then again this morning with us riding down in the carriage on the Clydesdale, I heard from one lady just a moment ago saying, thank you guys for doing this. That was magical seeing that coming down the street. So that was amazing and heartwarming to hear that. And you just imagine that sentiment is probably all over for many people.
I'm now with Lance Lunsford, who is the president of the Taxpayers Association for Indian River County. Thanks for coming by.
Anytime, Andy. I'm happy to be here for Sebastian's 100th anniversary, incredible milestone. And like I said, our association serves the whole county, so it's important for me. I'm a proud Vero boy through and through, but I want to be up here for my friends in Sebastian celebrating this special day for all of us.
What'd you think about the parade last night?
It's fantastic. I mean, I got to tell you, when you're in a parade like that and you see all the families, all the children out, and you're saying Merry Christmas from the floats, and they're saying Merry Christmas back, there is nothing more joyful than that. I think that same spirit was present today in the formal ceremony for the Centennial, and just seeing everyone out and about here in Riverview Park is just the most incredible sight. It's exactly what makes communities like this so special.
I thought it was wonderful sitting together as a council, being the Centennial year, being so unified. We have a great council that has a great vision for the city. So I just thought it was nice to all be together this year, throwing out candy, and we had a super great turnout. Weather was great. It felt seasonal, which was nice, being the Christmas season. So it was a great time. The Clydesdales today have been fabulous. Really a treat for this town and a beautiful day. Oh my gosh.
I want to thank everybody for coming out to the parade last night. Our Christmas parade was awesome. Everybody joined in. Today we had an amazing parade with the Clydesdales for our 100th anniversary. We got another 100 years to go. This has been an amazing centennial. What a wonderful day.
Well, one of the things that we're celebrating is our wonderful sense of community. 100 years of that. It's really incredible. And think about it. The different municipalities all came into being formally around the same time. Vero Beach had their centennial in 2019. Yours, Sebastian's, is this year. And the county, Indian River County is kicking off its centennial, which will culminate next June 29th to be exact. So what a wonderful place. Proud to be a sponsor of the centennial and just proud to be a member of this community. We couldn't be in a better place, and we all know that.
Happy birthday, Sebastian. Happy Centennial. So excited to be a part of it. Hopefully you guys got a taste of the Thanks Teddy Lager, which was the official Centennial beer of Sebastian's birthday. From Lynn and Pete Anderson at Pareidolia Brewing Company, happy birthday, Sebastian.
Hello, I'm Deputy Chief Tim Wood with Sebastian Police Department. We just want to thank everyone for coming out last night as well as this morning for awesome events that we had. We also want to thank everybody for their cooperation and their safety throughout those events.
Good morning, Sebastian. Good morning. Isn't it a beautiful day? I'm Bob McParlin, the mayor of Sebastian, and I'd like to, I'm very happy to see everybody here. And it's my privilege to serve as the mayor for the city of Sebastian. And again, I can't believe how many people came out today. So we have several dignitaries in attendance. I don't see him. He might be riding his horse somewhere, but Sheriff Eric Flowers.
He's got the hat.
He's got the hat. All right. We have former City Council member and Mayor Andrea Coy. Former Council member Linda Kinchin. We have the current chair of the Indian River County Commission, Joe Flesher. County Commissioner Joe Ehrman. County Commissioner Laura Moss. And then we have our very own council member and former multi-term mayor, Mr. Dodd, Edward Dodd. Next up is current council member Kelly Dixon. Current council member Christopher Nunn. Current vice mayor for the city of Sebastian, Fred Jones. And then I don't see her, but I know she's here, is our former charter officer and historian of Sebastian, Sally Mayo. All right. And we also have in attendance President of the Indian River Taxpayer Association, Lance Lunsford.
Happy birthday, Sebastian!
Now again, just to let everybody know that the horses will be down by the river until 2 p.m. if you want to take any pictures with the Clydesdales there. I think they were the star of the attraction. But then again, it's my honor to introduce an individual who has a long-standing relationship with Sebastian. In 1903, he signed an executive order making the Pelican Island Refuge the first refuge in the United States of America, the first official park. He was the 26th president of the United States and the youngest president at the age of 42. A man who needs a legend. He's a legend. Mr. Theodore Roosevelt. Thank you, Mayor Bob. Happy 100th birthday, Sebastian! Bully! I am Theodore Roosevelt, and I'm delighted to be with you on this beautiful morning. We celebrate the fact that 100 years ago today, December 8th, 1924, the city of Sebastian was incorporated. I didn't have the heart to tell the mayor that on that date, I'd already been dead for nearly 5 years. But I've been asked, why have you come back to life today? Well, in part because now I'm 166, and I'm here to make even the oldest of you feel young again by comparison. I'm also here to celebrate the good and the great things about this country, and there's nothing better than what's being done here in Sebastian, Indian River County, Florida. Here you don't just talk about conservation, you live conservation, in part by hunting and fishing and taking your grandchildren out into the great outdoors. It was my association with Sebastian 121 years ago that explains my participation today. For from the time when I was a little boy, as young as some of the youngsters here, I enjoyed studying the birds and the woodlands creatures. I did so not here along the intercoastal. I did so on a little island between the Hudson River and the East River, known as Manhattan. Can we hear a huzzah for New York? Fully, many a former resident of the Big Apple or the Empire State amongst us here in Florida. Why, even on Manhattan Island, then an island of 1 million souls and 500,000 horses, a boy could find nature in nearby Gramercy Park or Mr. Olmsted's great Central Park. Who's enjoyed Central Park amongst us? Some of you might have seen a funny little movie that was set there called Night at the Museum. There's a fellow in that movie who pretends to be me. Imagine that, a man pretending to be somebody he's not. The charter for that great museum was signed in the Roosevelt family living room when I was a little boy. My father, amongst its first board, he was responsible for hiring its first full-time and long-term executive director. The eastern edifice of that museum is the official New York State memorial to my life. But if I am remembered, it's perhaps as your conservation president. And I'm given credit for the national parks, but perhaps too much credit. Our first national park, Yellowstone, 1872. And you knew that before Kevin Costner was on the TV show. There were 5 national parks when I became your president. I doubled the number to 10. It took an act of Congress to name a national park. On this issue of the conservation of our natural resources, I was a progressive, and I discovered that all too often the opposite of progress was Congress. Maybe you've been to one of my 5 national parks. Crater Lake National Park in Oregon, Wind Cave National Park in South Dakota, and Mesa Verde National Park, the Pueblo Indian ruins in southern Colorado. My 2 other national parks have reverted to other uses. Platte National Park is in Sulphur, Oklahoma. Did you know the Clydesdales came all the way from Oklahoma? We put the 46th star on the flag during my administration for Oklahoma OK. Many of my Rough Riders were from Oklahoma and Indian Territory. Under President Franklin Roosevelt, my cousin, Congress dammed the Chickasaw River, created Lake Arbuckle. Platte National Park is now called Chickasaw National Recreation Area. Though some of you along the Intercoastal will agree with me that I don't see much value in recreation if it means zooming about a quiet body of water in a powerboat disturbing the birds. My 5th national park was in North Dakota. It's not Theodore Roosevelt National Park in Medora, from whence I've come today. I'm talking about something over at Devil's Hill, North Dakota. We called it Sully's Hill National Park after General Alfred Sully. It's now called White Horse Game Preserve. And that's where the bison and the elk and the buffalo roam. But I'm remembered here in Sebastian because in 1903, while I was your president and still very much involved in the ornithological, the bird community, I received letters from my friend, Dr. Frank Chapman, the head of the ornithological studies at the American Museum of Natural History, other members of the Audubon Society and the Ornithological Union who did their field work here along the Treasure Coast. And they complained that for another season, millions of nesting birds would be slaughtered and their nestlings left to starve. All that mostly women might wear the feathers of those dead birds on their hats and on their dresses, sometimes wearing entire dead birds as adornment. Well, there's no explaining fashion. And indeed, look we've got such beautiful fashion. We've got a monarch butterfly from Pelican Island. Well, I asked my Attorney General, Philander Knox, was there anything in the laws of the Constitution of the United States that would prohibit me from naming Pelican Island? Then a federally owned island, changing in shape from 3 to 5 acres of mangrove. That winter, the last nesting place of the brown pelican on the Atlantic. Was there anything that would prohibit me from naming that island a federal bird reservation? My Attorney General, Hendon Houghton, said there's no express prohibition. I said I thus declare it. And on March 13th, 1903, Pelican Island became our first national wildlife refuge. Fully. I must say thank you to our friends from the United States Fish and Wildlife Service and to the Friends organization, known alternately over the years as the Pelican Island Conservation Society, the Pelican Island Preservation Society, by whatever name. They are the volunteers that help to make Pelican Island the gem of the refuge system throughout our country. Huzzah for the volunteers of the Pelican Island Wildlife Festival in March. Now, I never came to visit Pelican Island, but I came to Florida for the first time in 1898. I arrived as a lieutenant colonel of the 1st United States Volunteer Cavalry. We were in Tampa, Florida, and history remembers us as the Rough Riders. We fought in the cause of Cuba Libre. Last night, one fellow asked me if that was a rum and coke. No, it was the cause of Cuban freedom from Spanish tyranny and monarchy. We camped for weeks in Tampa, and I enjoyed my visit with Mrs. Roosevelt, who came down from New York. She had our youngest son, Quentin, the previous November, and we had our time together at the Plant Hotel. Who's seen the minarets that are now the headquarters of Tampa University in downtown Tampa? They have a wonderful museum there, many Spanish cannon, a result of our victory in Cuba. My crowded hour, July 1st, 1898, leading the charge up Kettle Hill. When we departed Cuba, the Rough Riders toasted the regimental toast. And I repeat it today in honor of each and every man and woman here who has served in uniform for the United States of America. We toasted to the officers. May the war last long enough that we're all either wounded, killed, or promoted. And we were. It was a righteous cause, Cuban freedom, and I do hope that when I rose like a rocket afterwards, first to be governor of New York, and then vice president and president of the United States, well, I hope that there's something of my legacy that you might still appreciate today. I am your conservation president, and in addition to 5 national parks and 51 bird reservations, now known as National Wildlife Refuges, we also established the United States Forest Service under the Department of Agriculture and put that Pennsylvanian Gifford Pinchot in as our first national forester. I added 150 million acres of national forests to public protection, but realized with regards to the forests and other acts of conservation, like the Newlands Reclamation Act that created the Reclamation Service and dammed 30 western rivers, irrigated millions of western acres and provided for the settlement thereon by farmers and ranchers. Conservation means the wise use and utilization of our natural resources. I said it was the right and duty of every generation to use the natural resources, especially of our public lands, and to do so in a way that left them in better condition and not in worse. Now, I also in 1906 was the beneficiary of the National Monuments and Antiquities Act. Something tells me I've met many of you here. Some of you have come to the Sunshine State from the land where the tall corn grows. Give a shout for Iowa. And from Iowa, we had Congressman John Fletcher Lacey, who in 1906 gave us the Monuments and Antiquities Act, by which, as president, I could, by executive order, name certain public lands of historic, prehistoric, or scientific interest as national monuments. I first did so in 1906 to declare Devil's Tower in Wyoming as a national monument, eventually doing a great favor to the film career of Richard Dreyfuss. I declared 18 national monuments. When I toured the western states in 1903, I camped and tramped about Yosemite with John Muir, the great bearded botanist of the Sierra Nevadas. I camped for 2 weeks in Yellowstone, and on that trip, for the first time in my life, I saw the great Grand Canyon of the Colorado River in what was then Arizona Territory. Have you seen the Grand Canyon? Bully, we saved it for you. I returned from my western trip and requested of Congress that they name the Grand Canyon a national park. And each and every year, Congress refused. I don't mean to upset your modern sensibilities, but in my day, there were special interests on Wall Street working hand in pocket with members of Congress. Perhaps I'm not offending your modern sensibilities on this point. The chairman of the Taxpayers Association will understand. Well, when Congress year after year refused to name the Grand Canyon a national park, I used the powers of the Monuments and Antiquities Act. I signed an executive order naming the entire Grand Canyon a national monument. I said Congress would eventually come about its senses. Well, Congress turned handsprings in their wrath. One of my great opponents was my fellow Republican, Speaker of the House Joe Cannon of Danville, Illinois, along the Vermilion. He had famously said, "Not 1 cent for scenery." Well, you here know that the parks and refuges are not just scenery. They're the great wild places, and they're the playgrounds for our people. And so that same Joe Cannon, he said of me, "President Roosevelt has as much use for the Constitution as a tomcat has for a marriage license." I said the Constitution's made for the people, not the people for the Constitution. Now, some of you may bristle at my moralizing. I didn't know what the American people thought. I only know what they ought to think. One senator bristled at the White House. He said, "Mr. President, you're preaching." I said, "Senator, you're right. And the presidency is a bully pulpit, too." Now we say a governor's got a bully pulpit. Why, even Mayor Bob and the members of your city council, they've got a bully pulpit, and they use their public position to promote the things that they think are good for the Commonwealth, and I think that's just bully. Well, I admit I don't think I am all that well remembered anymore. We had a parade last night and again this morning. This morning, marching up towards the parade, I was thus attired with my top hat. One young man pointed at me and told his friends, he said, "Look, there's the Monopoly dude." If he knew his history half as well as you, he would have known I was the anti-Monopoly dude. Just ask Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan. I thought the greatest work done in my administration was a bit of ditch digging in the Isthmus of Central America. Who's traveled through the Panama Canal? Well, it had been a vision of mankind since the explorations of Balboa 4 centuries prior to my administration. The French had recently tried and failed at the expense of 20,000 lives and the French economy to dig the canal. We began our work in 1903. In 1906, I became the first president to leave the United States to visit a foreign republic during my term of office, and I inspected the canal. It was opened in 1914 and cut to 1/3 the amount of time necessary to move our great naval assets from one ocean to the other. Not, oh, bully indeed, and here's for the Navy. For it was during my administration, having been a former Assistant Secretary of the Navy during my 7.5 years as your president, I had 6 different secretaries of the Navy. Who do you think really ran the Navy? In 1907, I sent the Great White Fleet, 16 battleships painted white, the color of peace, to circumnavigate the globe. And when they returned to Hampton Roads on Washington's birthday, February 22nd, 1909, but days before the end of my second term, it was a fitting capstone to my administration. We had demonstrated to the powers of Asia and Europe that the United States Navy could do in peacetime what might be necessary to do in wartime. Posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, I was, during my lifetime and during my presidency, the first American and thus the first president to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for settling the Russo-Japanese War with the Treaty of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, the previous year. The Pure Food and Drug Act, federal meat inspection, railroad rate regulation, trust busting, I do believe today all of it is just so much dust in the windy streets of history. Concluding, I think I'm actually best remembered not for the legacy of success and achievement, but rather for the legacy of a failure. A failed bear hunt in the Delta of Mississippi in 1902, when I refused to shoot an adult male bear that had been wounded and tied to a tree. When I returned to the White House, I understood that the whole nation knew the news. It had spread by telegram and newspaper. The cartoonist Clifford Berryman did me no favor when he drew a cartoon of the incident, called it "Drawing the Line in Mississippi." The cartoon showed me refusing to shoot a small bear cub tied to a tree. Then I received a letter from the Mictum family of Brooklyn, New York, small candy makers, toy manufacturers there. Mrs. Mictum, in her letter to me, asking permission to make a stuffed bear and to name it after me. I wrote back, I said, you may go ahead and do so, but I don't think it will help your sales very much at all. I wonder if any of you have known the love and comfort of what then was called Teddy's bear, with the apostrophe possessive S, the sales for which were apparently pretty good. because the Mictums became the world-famous Ideal Toy Company of New York City. And so I do believe that in addition to the parks and the forests, I'm remembered for the teddy bear. And for Pelican Island, Sebastian, Florida. Happy 100th birthday, Sebastian. Godspeed. We'll see you in March for the Pelican Island Wildlife Festival. Bully! Bully!